When alien ships filled the sky searching for their lost princess, Dr. David Chen realized the child he'd raised for 10 years as his own daughter was about to change two worlds forever. Dr. David Chen had been working late again at the Ocean Research Center. The coffee had gone cold hours ago, but he barely noticed. Numbers and data filled his computer screen as he studied the latest reports from deep-sea monitoring stations. At 35, David had spent most of his adult life studying marine life, but nothing could have prepared him for what was about to change everything. The alarm started blaring at exactly 11:47 p.m. Red lights flashed across the control room as emergency signals poured in from the Pacific Monitoring Network. David's hands flew across his keyboard, pulling up satellite images and sonar readings. Something massive had just crashed into the ocean about 200 miles off the coast. "This can't be right," David whispered to himself, staring at the readings. The object was huge, larger than any aircraft or meteorite on record. But the strangest part wasn't its size. It was the energy signatures coming from the crash site. They were unlike anything he had ever seen. Within an hour, David found himself on a research vessel racing through choppy ocean waters. The government had mobilized quickly, sending teams of scientists and military personnel to investigate. As the lead marine biologist in the region, David had been called in to assess any environmental impact. But as their boat approached the coordinates, everyone fell silent. The water glowed with a soft blue light. It pulsed gently, like a heartbeat, creating ripples that spread outward in perfect circles. The crash site looked more like a landing than an accident. Whatever had come down had done so with incredible precision. "Sir, we're detecting a life sign," called out the sonar operator, his voice tight with nervousness. David leaned over the equipment, watching the readings. There it was, a small but steady signal coming from about 30 feet underwater. Something was alive down there, and it wasn't human. The rescue operation took 3 hours. Navy divers worked carefully to extract what they found, bringing up pieces of technology that defied explanation. The materials were lighter than aluminum but stronger than steel, and they seemed to glow with their own internal light. But the most shocking discovery came last. It was a child. At least it looked like a child. Small and fragile, with features that were almost human but not quite. The skin had a pale silvery tone that seemed to shift and shimmer in the light. Instead of hair, there were delicate strands that moved like they were underwater even in the open air. The eyes were larger than a human's, and when they occasionally fluttered open, they revealed irises that changed color like oil on water. "Is it breathing?" someone asked as they lifted the small form onto the research vessel. David knelt beside the unconscious figure, checking for vital signs. The chest rose and fell, but the rhythm was different from human breathing. Slower, deeper, with longer pauses between each breath. When he placed his hand near the child's face, he could feel a warmth that seemed to come from within, like the creature had its own internal heating system. "We need to get back to the facility immediately," David announced. "This being needs medical attention, but I don't think our normal equipment is going to work." The journey back to shore felt endless. David stayed beside the small alien throughout the trip, monitoring the weak but steady vital signs. Occasionally, the child would stir slightly, making soft sounds that were almost musical. During one of these moments, tiny fingers reached out and grasped David's hand with surprising strength. That simple touch changed everything. A wave of images flashed through David's mind. He saw vast cities floating among the clouds of distant worlds, creatures of light dancing through crystalline forests, and technology that seemed to blend perfectly with nature. But underneath all these wonders, he felt something else. Loneliness. Fear. The desperate need for safety and comfort. The child was lost, scared, and completely alone. Back at the research facility, David worked around the clock to create a suitable environment for their unexpected visitor. Regular hospital equipment proved useless. The child's body chemistry was completely different, requiring specific atmospheric conditions and a unique type of nutrition that took days to figure out. Other scientists wanted to run tests, take samples, and study every aspect of the alien's physiology. Government officials talked about security risks and potential threats, But David found himself becoming fiercely protective of the small being under his care. On the third day, the child finally woke up properly. Those color-changing eyes opened and focused on David with surprising clarity. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Then the child spoke, or rather, projected thoughts directly into David's mind. The words formed in perfect English, though David somehow knew that wasn't the being's natural language. "Where am I?" the voice in his head asked, young and frightened. "You're safe," David replied out loud, not sure if the child could understand spoken words. "I'm David. I've been taking care of you." The child tilted its head, studying David's face with intense concentration. "David," it repeated, this time speaking aloud with a voice like wind chimes. "You helped me." Over the following weeks, David learned that the child's name was something unpronounceable in human language, but she chose to call herself Luna because she liked Earth's moon. She explained that her people, the Etherians, had sent scouts to explore distant galaxies. Her ship had malfunctioned during the journey, forcing her to make an emergency landing in Earth's ocean. Luna was incredibly intelligent, learning human language and customs with remarkable speed. But she was still just a child, scared and homesick for a world she might never see again. She had nightmares about the crash, and during the day, she clung to David like he was her lifeline. The bond between them grew stronger each day. Luna began calling David father after learning about human family structures. To her, he was the one who had saved her, protected her, and given her the love she desperately needed. David tried to explain that he wasn't really her father, but Luna would just smile and say that fathers were the people who took care of you when you needed them most. As months passed, David realized that Luna was changing him too. Her ability to share emotions and thoughts had created a connection deeper than anything he had ever experienced. When she was happy, he felt joy beyond description. When she was sad, it broke his heart. Without meaning to, they had become a real family. But David knew this couldn't last forever. Eventually, someone would come looking for Luna. Her people would want their child back, and the human government would want to study her. The peaceful life they had built together was living on borrowed time. The decision to disappear wasn't easy, but David knew it was the only way to protect Luna. He had grown to love her as his own daughter, and she saw him as the only father she had ever known. When officials started talking about moving her to a more secure facility for additional testing, David made his choice. They left in the middle of the night, taking only what they could carry. David had prepared for this possibility, setting up a new identity and finding a remote cabin in the mountains where they could live quietly. Luna was excited about their adventure, not understanding the danger they might be in. For 5 peaceful years, they lived as father and daughter in their mountain hideaway. Luna grew from a frightened child into a bright, curious young girl who could speak both human languages and communicate through thought. She learned to cook, helped David with his research, and filled their home with laughter. David taught her everything he could about human culture, science, and art. In return, Luna shared stories of her homeworld and demonstrated abilities that seemed like magic. She could make plants grow faster, heal small injuries with her touch, and sense the emotions of animals from miles away. They were happy. It was the kind of simple, perfect happiness that David had never imagined possible. Luna called him Dad, helped with household chores, and worried about normal things like whether the chickens were laying enough eggs. Sometimes David almost forgot that she wasn't human. But late at night, when Luna was sleeping peacefully in her room, David would look up at the stars and wonder when their peaceful life would end. He knew that someday Luna's real family would come looking for her. And when that day arrived, he would have to face the consequences of the choice he had made out of love. That day came sooner than he expected, announced by massive shadows falling across their mountain home as alien ships filled the sky. David was teaching Luna how to identify bird calls when the sky changed. They were sitting on their cabin porch, enjoying the morning sunshine, when shadows began moving across the mountains. At first, David thought it was just clouds, but clouds didn't move in perfect geometric patterns. Luna dropped her bird guidebook and stood up slowly, her face turning pale. Her special abilities had always made her sensitive to things others couldn't detect, and now David could see the fear growing in her colorful eyes. "Dad," she whispered, her voice trembling. "They're here." David looked up and felt his heart stop. Massive ships hung in the sky like floating cities, their surfaces gleaming with the same soft blue light he remembered from Luna's crash site 10 years ago. They were beautiful and terrifying at the same time, clearly built by beings far more advanced than humans. The ships weren't just hovering randomly. They were searching, moving in organized patterns across different regions. Bright beams of light swept down from their undersides, scanning the earth below like giant flashlights looking for something precious they had lost. "We need to get inside," David said, trying to keep his voice calm for Luna's sake. But his hands were shaking as he gathered up their things. They rushed into the cabin, and David immediately turned on every news channel he could find. The reports were chaotic and frightening. The alien ships had appeared simultaneously over major cities around the world. So far, they hadn't attacked anyone, but their presence had thrown the entire planet into panic. Then the broadcast began. A voice spoke in every language on Earth at the same time, transmitted directly into people's minds regardless of what they were doing or where they were. The voice was musical and powerful, clearly female, and filled with a mother's desperate love. "People of Earth," the voice said, "we are the Etherians. We have come seeking our lost child, taken from us 10 of your years ago. We know she lives among you. We mean no harm to your world, but we will not leave without our daughter. If you are caring for her, please understand that she belongs with her own kind. Return her to us and we will depart in peace." Luna burst into tears, not the normal crying of an upset child, but something deeper and more heartbreaking. Her psychic abilities were picking up emotions from the ships above, and David could feel some of it too through their connection. Longing, grief, hope, and love so powerful it was overwhelming. "That's my mother," Luna sobbed, clinging to David's shirt. "But I don't remember her. Why don't I remember her?" David held his daughter tight, his mind racing. He had always known this day might come, but he had hoped they would have more time. Luna had been so young when he found her, barely more than a baby. Of course she wouldn't remember her birth family. The searches intensified over the following days. The alien ships moved closer to populated areas, their scanning beams becoming more frequent and thorough. News reports showed people gathering in the streets, some welcoming the visitors, others demanding they leave. World leaders held emergency meetings. But what could they do against technology this advanced? David and Luna tried to maintain their normal routine, but everything felt different now. Luna was quieter, often staring up at the sky with a confused expression. Sometimes she would start to say something, then stop, as if she was hearing voices David couldn't detect. "Dad," she said one evening as they were making dinner together, "what if they're right? What if I should be with them instead of you?" The question hit David like a punch to the chest. "Do you want to be with them?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Luna shook her head, but he could see the uncertainty in her eyes. "I don't know them. You're my family, but sometimes, when I look at the ships, I feel something strange, like there's a part of me that's missing and maybe they have it." That night, David lay awake staring at the ceiling. Through their psychic connection, he could feel Luna's troubled dreams. She was experiencing flashes of memories from before the crash, images of a world unlike anything on Earth. In her dreams, she saw beings like herself, including a tall, graceful figure with kind eyes who sang lullabies in a language that felt like home. The next morning brought terrible news. The searching had become more aggressive. Military jets had tried to intercept one of the alien ships, and while the Etherians hadn't fired back, they had disabled the aircraft with some kind of energy pulse. No one was hurt, but the message was clear. The aliens were losing patience. Then came the announcement that changed everything. "We know our child is being hidden," the voice said, reaching every mind on the planet. "We have detected her unique energy signature in your mountain regions. We will find her soon. To the human who has cared for her, We are grateful for your kindness, but she must return to her true family. You have one day to bring her to us willingly, or we will come and take her." David felt Luna's hand slip into his as they stood on their porch, looking up at the ships that now seemed much closer. She was trying to be brave, but he could sense her fear and confusion through their bond. "What are we going to do, Dad?" she asked. David squeezed her hand, making a decision that he knew might cost him everything. "We're going to face this together," he said. "Whatever happens, I want you to know that these have been the best 10 years of my life. You're my daughter, Luna, and I love you more than all the stars in the sky." Luna smiled through her tears. "I love you too, Dad. Even if I have to go with them, you'll always be my father." But David wasn't ready to give up yet. He had spent 10 years protecting Luna, and he wasn't about to stop now. If the Etherians wanted their daughter back, they would have to prove they could love her as much as he did. The ships moved closer as the day wore on, their beams of light sweeping across the mountainside like searching fingers. David could feel the weight of their attention pressing down on his small cabin. Soon, they would be found. That evening, as the sun set behind the alien vessels, a new kind of light began to glow around their home. It wasn't coming from the ships above, but from Luna herself. Her body was responding to the presence of her own kind, and the psychic energy was building to dangerous levels. "Dad," Luna gasped, her eyes wide with fear. "I can't control it. Something's happening to me." Before David could respond, the light around Luna flared brightly, sending out a pulse that lit up the entire mountain. In that moment, every Etherian ship turned toward their location. They had been found. The silence after Luna's psychic pulse was broken by a sound unlike anything David had ever heard. It was like wind chimes mixed with singing, growing louder as something approached their cabin through the darkness. David pulled Luna behind him, his heart hammering as he watched the trees around their home begin to glow with soft blue light. The air itself seemed to shimmer and dance, and then she appeared. The Etherian queen materialized in their front yard like something from a dream. She was tall and graceful, with the same silvery skin as Luna but more radiant, as if she was lit from within by starlight. Her hair moved like liquid silk, and her eyes held the wisdom of centuries. She wore robes that seemed to be woven from the night sky itself, sparkling with what looked like real stars. But despite her otherworldly beauty, David could see the pain in her face. This was a mother who had been searching for her lost child for 10 long years. "Luna," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the yard without seeming loud. "Baby." Single word held so much love and longing that it made David's chest ache. Luna stepped out from behind David, her own body glowing brighter in response to her mother's presence. "Are you really my mother?" she asked, her voice small and uncertain. The queen's face crumpled with emotion. "My precious star child," she whispered, taking a step forward. "I have searched every corner of the galaxy for you. Not a day has passed that I haven't thought of you, worried about you, prayed to find you safe." But when the queen reached out her hands, Luna stepped back toward David. The movement was small, but its impact was enormous. The queen froze, her expression changing from joy to confusion to something that looked like betrayal. "Why do you fear me, little one?" the queen asked, her voice breaking slightly. "I am your mother. I carried you, sang to you, loved you before you even drew your first breath." "I don't remember," Luna said, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry, but I don't remember you at all. David is my dad. He's the one who saved me, who took care of me when I was scared and hurt. He's the one who taught me how to be brave." The queen's eyes shifted to David, and he felt the full weight of her alien intelligence studying him. There was no hiding from that gaze. She could probably see every memory, every moment of love and care he had shared with Luna over the past 10 years. "You," she said, her voice taking on a dangerous edge. "You are the one who stole my daughter." "I didn't steal her," David replied, surprised by his own courage. "I saved her. Your ship crashed in our ocean. She was dying. I spent months figuring out how to keep her alive when no one else could. I gave her a home, a family, a chance to grow up happy and safe. The Queen's expression hardened. You kidnapped a child of royal blood. You prevented her from returning to her people. You corrupted her natural development by raising her among primitives. David felt anger rising in his chest. Primitives? I taught her kindness, curiosity, and love. I gave her everything I had. Look at her. Does she seem corrupted to you? She doesn't even know who she is. The Queen snapped back. She doesn't remember her own mother, her own world, her own heritage. She calls a human father when her real family has been mourning her loss for a decade. Luna made a sound of distress, her psychic abilities responding to the emotional conflict around her. The air began to crackle with energy, and both David and the Queen stopped arguing to look at her. "Stop fighting!" Luna cried, her power flaring outward. "I can feel how much you both love me, and it's tearing me apart." Something extraordinary happened then. Luna's psychic burst connected all three of them, forcing David and the Queen to experience each other's emotions and memories. David suddenly felt the Queen's 10 years of grief, the sleepless nights spent wondering if her daughter was dead, the desperate hope that kept her searching when everyone else had given up. At the same time, the Queen experienced David's memories of Luna's recovery, her first steps, her first words, the bedtime stories, the scraped knees he had bandaged, the nightmares he had chased away. She felt his fierce protective love, his willingness to sacrifice everything for Luna's happiness. The psychic connection lasted only seconds, but it changed everything. When it ended, both adults staggered slightly, overwhelmed by what they had experienced. The Queen stared at David with new understanding. "You truly love her," she said, her voice soft with wonder. "Not as a curiosity or a prize, but as a father loves his child." "And you've been in agony without her," David replied, his own voice thick with emotion. "I understand why you came. If someone had taken Luna from me, I would have searched the galaxy too." Luna looked back and forth between them, hope beginning to replace the fear in her eyes. "Does this mean you don't have to fight anymore?" But before either adult could answer, new lights appeared in the sky. More Etherian ships were descending, larger and more imposing than the Queen's vessel. As they landed around the cabin, figures in elaborate robes emerged, their faces stern and disapproving. "Your Majesty," called out the leader of the group, his voice cold with authority. "You have been gone too long. The council grows impatient. We have located the princess. It is time to retrieve her and depart this primitive world." The Queen's expression tightened. "High Commander, this situation is more complex than we anticipated." "There is nothing complex about it," the commander replied, his gaze falling on David with obvious disgust. "The human has committed an act of war by keeping our princess from her people. He will be dealt with accordingly." David felt Luna move closer to him, her small hand gripping his shirt. The peaceful moment of understanding between him and the Queen was being shattered by the arrival of her people, and David could see the conflict in her eyes. She was caught between her love for her daughter and her duty to her people. And now, with the council watching, she would have to choose which was more important. The commander raised his hand and David could see energy beginning to gather around his fingers. "Step away from the princess, human. Your interference ends now." "Wait," the Queen commanded, but David could hear the uncertainty in her voice. Luna looked up at David with eyes full of tears. "Dad, what's going to happen to us?" David knelt down to her level, taking her hands in his. "Whatever happens, remember that you are loved. By me, by your mother, by everyone who has been lucky enough to know you. That love will protect you no matter where you go." The energy around the commander's hand grew brighter, and David closed his eyes, preparing for the end. But instead of pain, he felt Luna's power surge around them like a protective shield. "No!" she shouted, her voice echoing with psychic force that made all the Etherians step back in surprise. "I won't let you hurt my dad." The alarm started blaring at exactly 11:47 p.m. Red lights flashed across the control room as emergency signals poured in from the Pacific Monitoring Network. David's hands flew across his keyboard. pulling up satellite images and sonar readings. Something massive had just crashed into the ocean, about 200 miles off the coast. "This can't be right," David whispered to himself, staring at the readings. The object was huge, larger than any aircraft or meteorite on record. But the strangest part wasn't its size. It was the energy signatures coming from the crash site. They were unlike anything he had ever seen. Within an hour, David found himself on a research vessel racing through choppy ocean waters. The government had mobilized quickly, sending teams of scientists and military personnel to investigate. As the lead marine biologist in the region, David had been called in to assess any environmental impact. But as their boat approached the coordinates, everyone fell silent. The water glowed with a soft blue light. It pulsed gently like a heartbeat, creating ripples that spread outward in perfect circles. The crash site looked more like a landing than an accident. Whatever had come down had done so with incredible precision. "Sir, we're detecting a life sign," called out the sonar operator, his voice tight with nervousness. David leaned over the equipment, watching the readings. There it was, a small but steady signal coming from about 30 feet underwater. Something was alive down there, and it wasn't human. The rescue operation took 3 hours. Navy divers worked carefully to extract what they found, bringing up pieces of technology that defied explanation. The materials were lighter than aluminum but stronger than steel, and they seemed to glow with their own internal light. But the most shocking discovery came last. It was a child. At least it looked like a child. Small and fragile, with features that were almost human but not quite. The skin had a pale silvery tone that seemed to shift and shimmer in the light. Instead of hair, there were delicate strands that moved like they were underwater, even in the open air. The eyes were larger than a human's, and when they occasionally fluttered open, they revealed irises that changed color like oil on water. "Is it breathing?" someone asked as they lifted the small form onto the research vessel. David knelt beside the unconscious figure, checking for vital signs. The chest rose and fell, but the rhythm was different from human breathing. Slower, deeper, with longer pauses between each breath. When he placed his hand near the child's face, he could feel a warmth that seemed to come from within, like the creature had its own internal heating system. "We need to get back to the facility immediately," David announced. Luna's protective shield pulsed with brilliant light, but the effort was draining her small body. David could see her trembling as she tried to maintain the barrier between him and the hostile Etherian Council. Her nose began to bleed, a sign that her hybrid abilities were being pushed beyond their limits. "Luna, stop," David said gently, placing his hand on her shoulder. "You're hurting yourself." "I won't let them take you away," she gasped, her voice weak but determined. The Queen stepped forward, her face filled with alarm as she saw her daughter's distress. "Lower your weapons," she commanded the council members. "Can't you see what your aggression is doing to her?" But the High Commander remained unmoved. "Your Majesty, the child's attachment to this human is clearly unhealthy. She needs immediate treatment to remove these corrupted bonds before they cause permanent damage to her psychic development." "Corrupted?" David stood up slowly, still keeping one protective hand on Luna's shoulder. "You call love corrupted? You call the bond between a parent and child unhealthy?" "You are not her parent," the commander replied coldly. "You are a primitive being who has interfered with the natural order. The princess belongs with her own kind, not with some lesser species that cannot even understand her true nature." Luna's shield flickered and failed, and she collapsed against David's leg, exhausted. The Queen moved instinctively toward her daughter, but Luna flinched away, still afraid of these strangers who looked like her but felt so foreign. "Please," the Queen whispered, her voice breaking. "I just want to hold my daughter." David looked down at Luna, seeing the confusion and pain in her colorful eyes. Despite everything, he knew what he had to do. "Luna," he said softly, "your mother has been looking for you for 10 years. She loves you more than anything in the universe. Maybe you should let her come closer." Luna looked up at him with surprise. But what if she takes me away from you? Then I'll find a way to visit, David said, trying to smile despite his breaking heart. But right now you need her help more than mine. Your powers are getting stronger and I don't know how to help you control them. Slowly, hesitantly, Luna took a step toward her birth mother. The queen knelt down, tears streaming down her silver cheeks as Luna approached. When her daughter finally came within reach, the queen gently placed her hands on Luna's face. The moment they touched, both mother and daughter gasped. A flow of memories passed between them, and Luna's eyes widened as images of her early childhood came flooding back. She remembered being carried through crystal gardens, learning her first words in the musical Etherian language, and falling asleep to lullabies that sounded like starlight. "Mama," Luna whispered in Etherian, the word coming naturally for the first time in 10 years. The queen sobbed with relief, pulling Luna into a gentle embrace. "My precious star child. I thought I had lost you forever." But even as they reconnected, Luna kept looking back at David, her expression torn between two loves. "I remember you now," she told her mother. "But I love David too. He's been my dad for so long. Can't you both be my family?" The High Commander made a sound of disgust. "This is exactly what we feared. The human has poisoned her mind with his primitive concepts of family. She cannot serve her people while divided between two worlds. Maybe that's not her choice to make," David said quietly. "Maybe that's something we adults need to figure out." The queen looked at him with surprise. "What do you mean?" "I mean that Luna is special," David replied, watching as his daughter stood between two worlds, literally and figuratively. "She's not just Etherian, and she's not just human anymore. She's something new, something that could bridge the gap between our peoples. But only if we let her." The commander stepped forward, his patience clearly exhausted. "Enough of this nonsense. Your Majesty, the council has voted. The princess returns with us immediately, and this human faces judgment for his crimes." "Wait," the queen said, her voice taking on a note of authority that made everyone pause. "I need to understand something first." She turned to David. "Show me everything. Not just memories, but your life with her. Show me how you raised my daughter." David hesitated. "I don't have psychic abilities like you do." "But Luna does," the queen replied. "She can share your memories with me if you're willing to let her." Luna looked up at David with hope in her eyes. "Will you let me show her, Dad? So she can see how good you've been to me?" David knelt down and took Luna's hands. "Are you sure you can do this safely? I don't want you to hurt yourself again." "Mama can help me," Luna said, looking between her two parents. "Together we're stronger." The queen nodded, placing one hand on Luna's shoulder and extending her other hand toward David. "This will feel strange, but it won't hurt." When David took the queen's hand, the world exploded into shared experience. The queen lived through every moment of Luna's life with him. She felt his panic when Luna had been sick with fever, his pride when she took her first steps, his joy when she called him Dad for the first time. She experienced thousands of small moments of love, patience, and care. She saw David staying up all night when Luna had nightmares, teaching her to ride a bike, helping her with homework, and always putting her needs before his own. She felt his love for Luna pure and selfless, asking nothing in return except her happiness. When the connection ended, the queen was weeping openly. "You gave her everything," she whispered to David. "Even when you knew you might lose her someday, you gave her everything." "Because that's what parents do," David replied simply. "We love our children enough to let them go if that's what's best for them." The High Commander watched this exchange with growing frustration. "Your Majesty, these emotions are clouding your judgment. The princess must return to fulfill her destiny among our people." But Luna had heard enough. She stepped forward, her young face set with determination that reminded David of all the times she had stood up to bullies at school or defended animals that needed help. "I have an idea," she announced, her voice carrying clearly in the mountain air. "What if I don't have to choose? Everyone stared at her, and Luna took a deep breath before continuing. Mama, you came all this way because you love me and want me to be happy, right? The Queen nodded, unable to speak. And Dad, you've always told me that the most important thing is to help people understand each other, even when they're different. David smiled despite his tears. That's right, sweetheart. Luna looked around at all the adults, human and alien alike. Then why can't we work together? Why can't I spend time with both my families? I could learn about my Etherian heritage from Mama and the Council, but I could also stay connected to Earth and Dad. Maybe I could help both our peoples understand each other better. The suggestion hung in the air like a fragile hope. The Queen looked thoughtful, but the High Commander immediately began shaking his head. Impossible, he declared. The princess cannot divide her loyalty between two worlds. But Luna's eyes were beginning to glow with that familiar inner light, and David realized she had inherited more than just psychic abilities from her mother. She had inherited royal determination as well. The High Commander's rejection of Luna's proposal sparked something powerful in the young girl. Her eyes blazed with silver fire as she stood up straighter, and for the first time, David could see the future queen she was meant to become. You say it's impossible, Luna said, her voice carrying a new authority that made even the council members step back. But you've never tried. You've never even asked what I want. The commander's expression grew stern. Princess, you are too young to understand the complexities of ruling. Your duty is to your people, not to your personal desires. My people? Luna's voice rose, and the air around her began to shimmer with psychic energy. What about the people of Earth? They're my people too now. I've lived here for 10 years. I know their kindness, their courage, their capacity for love. They deserve to be treated with respect, not dismissed as primitives. David felt a surge of pride watching his daughter stand up for her beliefs, but he also worried about the strain this confrontation was putting on her developing abilities. The Queen seemed to sense his concern. She moved closer to Luna, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. Easy, Star Child. Your power is growing beyond what your young body can handle. Then teach me, Luna said, turning to her birth mother. Teach me how to control it, how to use it to help others. But don't ask me to forget the past 10 years or the father who raised me. The Queen looked at her daughter with wonder and growing admiration. You have grown into someone remarkable, she said softly. Far more than I ever imagined possible. The High Commander's patience finally snapped. Enough. Your Majesty, I invoke the ancient law of royal succession. If you cannot make the necessary decision to secure the princess's return, then the council will make it for you. Several other council members stepped forward, their hands glowing with the same energy David had seen before. But this time they weren't aiming at him. They were preparing to take Luna by force. No, the Queen said firmly, moving to shield her daughter. I forbid it. You forbid it? The commander laughed coldly. You have been absent from your duties for 10 years, searching for one child while ignoring the needs of millions. The council questions your fitness to rule. David realized that this confrontation was about more than just Luna. This was a power struggle that had been brewing for years, with Luna's return serving as the catalyst for a larger conflict. But Luna had her own ideas about how to handle the situation. She stepped out from behind both her parents, her small form radiating confidence and power that seemed to come from both her human upbringing and her alien heritage. You want to know what's best for the Etherian people? She asked, her voice carrying across the mountainside. Then listen to me, because I am your future queen, and I have seen things you haven't. The entire council fell silent, shocked by the authority in her young voice. I have lived among humans for 10 years, Luna continued, her eyes moving from face to face. I have seen their capacity for growth, for change, for love that transcends all boundaries. They welcomed me when I was lost and afraid. They protected me when I was vulnerable. They taught me that strength comes from helping others, not from ruling over them. She gestured toward David. This man gave up his old life to keep me safe. He risked everything to give me a home and a family. He taught me that being different doesn't make you less valuable. It makes you special. The Queen watched her daughter with growing amazement, while David felt his heart swell with pride. I am both human and Etherian now, Luna declared. I carry the best of both worlds inside me. You can force me to choose one or the other, but you'll be throwing away something precious. You'll be losing the chance to build bridges between two civilizations that could learn so much from each other. The High Commander started to object, but Luna raised her hand and he found himself unable to speak. Her psychic abilities had grown beyond anything anyone expected. I propose a new way, Luna continued. Let me spend time with both my families. Let me learn from both my worlds. And let me use what I learned to help humans and Etherians understand each other better. Imagine what we could accomplish if we worked together instead of staying apart. She lowered her hand and the commander regained his voice, but he seemed less certain now. It's never been done before, he said weakly. That's exactly why we should try, Luna replied with a smile that reminded David of all the times she had convinced him to let her try something new and challenging. The Queen stepped forward, her decision made. My daughter is right, she announced. She has become something wonderful, something that could benefit both our peoples. I propose we establish a cultural exchange program, with Luna as our first ambassador. The council members looked uncertain, but before they could protest, Luna did something that changed everything. She reached out with her mind, not to control or intimidate, but to share. Every person present, human and alien alike, suddenly experienced a flood of memories and emotions. They felt David's love for his adopted daughter, the Queen's desperate search across the galaxy, Luna's joy at discovery, her curiosity about both her worlds, and her deep desire to help others. They experienced the beauty of two different civilizations through the eyes of someone who belonged to both. When the sharing ended, there wasn't a dry eye among them. The High Commander was the last to speak. Perhaps, he said slowly, there is wisdom in trying something new. 3 months later, David found himself standing in the observation deck of an Etherian ship, watching Earth rotate slowly below. Luna had convinced both governments to establish the first interspecies cultural center on a space station orbiting Earth, and David had been appointed as the first human ambassador to the Etherian people. Luna spent her days moving between the human and Etherian sections of the station, learning about her heritage while teaching others about the importance of bridging differences. She had grown taller and more confident, but she still ran to hug David every evening and still asked for bedtime stories. The Queen had established a permanent residence on the station as well, and over the months, she and David had developed an unexpected friendship. They were both parents who loved the same remarkable child, and that bond had grown into mutual respect and affection. She's happy, the Queen said, joining David at the observation window. Below them, Luna was leading a group of human and Etherian children in some kind of game that seemed to involve a lot of laughter. She is, David agreed, and she's changing the world. The Queen smiled. She gets that from both her fathers. David looked at her with surprise. Both? You raised her, loved her, and shaped who she became, the Queen said simply. Biology is just one part of being a parent. Love is what makes a family. As they watched, Luna looked up and waved at them through the window, her face bright with joy. She had found a way to have everything she wanted, 2 parents who loved her, 2 worlds to explore, and a future full of possibilities. Thank you, the Queen said quietly. For what? David asked. For giving me back my daughter, she replied. But more than that, for helping me understand that family isn't about possession. It's about love that's willing to grow and change, and include others. David smiled, thinking about how much their unusual family had grown. Luna taught us that, he said. She always was the smartest one among us. Far below, Luna laughed at something one of her friends had said, the sound carrying faintly through the ship's speakers. It was a sound of pure happiness, the voice of a child who belonged everywhere and nowhere, who had taught 2 civilizations that love really could conquer all differences. And in that moment, David knew that every choice he had made, every sacrifice he had endured, had been worth it for this. Watching his daughter help create a future where no one would ever have to choose between the families they loved. The alarm started blaring at exactly 11:47 p.m. Red lights flashed across the control room as emergency signals poured in from the Pacific Monitoring Network. David's hands flew across his keyboard, pulling up satellite images and sonar readings. Something massive had just crashed into the ocean, about 200 miles off the coast. This can't be right, David whispered to himself, staring at the readings. The object was huge, larger than any aircraft or meteorite on record. But the strangest part wasn't its size. It was the energy signatures coming from the crash site. They were unlike anything he had ever seen. Within an hour, David found himself on a research vessel racing through choppy ocean waters. The government had mobilized quickly, sending teams of scientists and military personnel to investigate. As the lead marine biologist in the region, David had been called in to assess any environmental impact. But as their boat approached the weir coordinates, everyone fell silent. The water glowed with a soft blue light. It pulsed gently like a heartbeat, creating ripples that spread outward in perfect circles. The crash site looked more like a landing than an accident. Whatever had come down had done so with incredible precision. "Sir, we're detecting a life sign," called out the sonar operator, his voice tight with nervousness. David leaned over the equipment, watching the readings. There it was, a small but steady signal coming from about 30 feet underwater. Something was alive down there, and it wasn't human. The rescue operation took 3 hours. Navy divers worked carefully to